Hey guys, Vanessa here, and in today's video I am going to be telling my experience. Sorry, I'm just adjusting myself, but I'm going to be telling my experience um, in a 5150 hold. I want to start off by saying that I didn't want anyone in my family who isn't a close family member or a close friend that this happened to me because I was embarrassed by it and I felt like it's a sign of weakness. But I decided that I want to share my experience with everyone because I think that maybe one day it can help someone else. And I think talking about it and getting my story out there can also help myself. I want to apologize for my rats in the background as well. They're eating, it's dinner time, and they eat really loud. And secondly, I want to apologize for the quality. I am recording with my phone instead of my camera, so the quality is going to be a little weird, and it's also like really dark outside, so I just have like a light here. I nervous laugh sometimes, so I apologize for that as well. I'm apologizing so much. Oh my gosh, like, oh. Let's get started. I'm not going to explain too much of why I went into the hold or like details about it because I feel like that's extremely personal. This whole experience is extremely personal, but I feel like getting into details and things like that really, I guess, gets to me, and I don't want everyone to know every little detail about my life. I'll scratch the surface, but the interior I just kind of want to keep personal. But so basically, the day that I got put into the hold, I sent a text out to someone that I really love and care about, and I let him know that I didn't want to be here anymore. And him being worried about my safety, he told my mom, and my mom told the rest of my family. I left my house, I took my car, and I turned my cell phone off, and I went out to find out how I was going to harm myself. In doing this, I didn't have a plan. I just knew that I didn't want to be here, and I had to figure out how I was going to make that possible. I was gone for, I want to say, between 2 to 4 hours. I know 2 to 4 hours is a big time frame difference, but the reason why there's such a time frame difference is because I wasn't really looking at the time. I was just kind of on go mode on my emotions. I'm sorry. But so while I was missing for these hours, I'm not going to say any names or anything. I also apologize if you can hear it vibrating because I'm getting text messages as well because I'm using my phone. But anyways, during this time frame, the 2 to 4 hours, I'm sure as soon as my mom heard that I didn't want to be here anymore, she called the police. The police labeled me as a missing person. Usually you have to be a missing person for 24 hours, but I believe the reason why my circumstance was different was because that even though I am above the age of 18, and it hasn't been 24 hours, if you do have, I don't want to say mental issues, I'm not exactly sure what the correct terminology is, but if you're someone who battles with like any type of mental disorder, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, anxiety, any of those, I think you're considered like an at-risk person. I really don't know the terminology or exactly how that works, but I was over 18, and I battle with my mental health. So they labeled me as a missing person, and this is all stuff that my mom had told me. I didn't know any of this was going on. I just knew I didn't want to be here anymore, and I took my car and left. And the only person that I told was the person that I really love and care about. They went out. I guess there were 10 police cars, and I feel really bad that they were out looking for me, especially since I didn't want to be here anymore, and I thought the end result was going to be that I wasn't going to be. So for 10 police cars to be out of their way looking for me. Speaking of police cars, I hear a siren. That's oddly strange, but I feel like guilt that they were looking for me. The person that I love was looking for me. My mom was looking for me, and my family was calling me and texting me, and for some reason I can't remember why, but every hour, every 30 minutes or so, I'm calculating this all in my head because I don't remember time frames. I would turn my phone on to I was trying to Google something. I think I was trying to Google how to get to the viewpoint. I don't know if anybody knows what a viewpoint is, but where I live in Los Angeles County, and we have a viewpoint, and it's just this area where I believe you're kind of like in the mountains or hills. I'm not exactly sure again what the terminology is, if it's mountains or hills. I don't know, I'm sorry, but you can get up there and you can view the city that I live in from that area. But I wasn't going to the viewpoint to look at the scenery exactly. It was just kind of an idea that I thought might be a way to end things for me forever. But so I was looking for the address. I'm pretty sure that's why I kept turning my phone on. I can't remember, but I would turn it on and I would still be getting calls from my family, and I was like, oh no, like my family knows. So everyone was texting me because I did tell the person I love to tell my family that I love them, and I wasn't responding because I was trying to use Google, and I couldn't use Google because these phone calls and text messages kept popping up. But eventually, on one of the tries that I turned on my phone, I noticed a call from the person I love. I'm sorry if it gets really annoying that I'm saying the person I love, but it's because I don't want to explain the situation. So that's kind of why I'm using that terminology, and I don't know if he wants me to use his name. So that's kind of why I'm saying it like that. But on one of the calls that I received, one of them was from him, and I decided to answer. And when I answered, he asked me where I was, and at this point I wasn't any longer feeling ill anymore. As the time passed, I no longer felt like I wanted to end my life. I just kind of sat in my car and just wanted to feel nothing. I wanted to feel absolutely nothing. So I sat there. I actually got a blanket and a towel that I had in my trunk, and I put my head down in the back seat and I just laid there for a while. I took a walk in this neighborhood that I didn't know. They had like a dirt path behind the house, and I took a walk there just thinking, and at this point I no longer wanted to end my life because this would have been my second attempt, because I have attempted before. I didn't go in the holds the first time, but I know what it did to my family the first time. I'm just gonna adjust myself because my feet are falling asleep. But I know what it did to my family the first time, and I didn't want them, my family and my friends, I didn't want them to go through that again. So I changed my mind. And again, now going back, I turned my phone on one of those times when I was searching for the viewpoint, and I got a call. And that call was from the person I love. I answered, and he was asking me where I was at. And since I wasn't ill anymore, I told him. I stayed on the phone with him until he got to my location. We sat on the curb and we talked. And I asked him if he called the police, and he said no. And I asked him if my mom called the police, and he was quiet. And that's when I realized that my mom did call the police, and my mom called his phone, and he answered. I talked to her on his phone, and she told me the police were coming for me and that I needed help. The police came. I waited for them there with the person I love on the curb. They were asking me questions, and I answered those questions for them, but when it came down to getting to details of why I felt this way, I shut down. I didn't want to tell a bunch of people that I don't know my problems, or have them, I guess, invalidate the way I feel because they don't know me. Anyways, they admit me to the local regional hospital. I was taken by a police car, which was extremely uncomfortable. They didn't handcuff me. do anything wrong. I wasn't gonna harm anybody. And at this point, I was no longer wanting to end things for myself either, but they still admitted me into the hospital. I sat in a hallway. It was like just a few days before Christmas this year, which today is Christmas actually that I'm filming this. I just got back from my family's, and I feel well enough about the situation to film it for you guys. But so I waited in the hallway for 6 hours. There were patients coming in and out, and not all of them were for mental health. Some of them were for like physical reasons, and a lot of guilt sat inside of me. I'm here sitting in this chair, and there are people coming in on gurneys that like need like physical help, and I felt like guilt inside of me that I didn't have any type of physical pain. But there was a man who came in who sat beside me, and he was like vomiting everywhere. I had to move the whole time. There was a type of like police therapist. He brought me a sandwich. I was hungry. He was wearing like a Christmas sweater, which was really cool. He asked me, sorry, I'm like cracking my bones, but he asked me questions, and I answered him a little bit more because I knew everything that he was saying was in confidentiality, and he was like an actual, like, he was like some type of deputy, but with the mental health. I don't really know exactly how to explain it. I let him know a bit. I didn't let him know everything. But once I was finally admitted and I got a room, they sat me in this room and they asked me to put all of my belongings in a plastic bag, including my shoes and my cell phone. I couldn't have my car keys, which I didn't have on me anyways, but if I had my car keys or my purse on me, I had to give them everything. So just imagine feeling like your lowest and being taken somewhere in a police car where you don't know anybody. Your belongings are taken away from you, and you're put into this small little room wearing a hospital gown with no shoes. They give you these hospital socks that you're allowed to walk around in, but you're not allowed to wear shoes at all. Especially shoes with laces is a big no-no. But they took all my belongings away. I sat in this dark room. The only thing that was in there was this temporary bed that was like on wheels that I had to sleep on for 3 days, which was a total of 2 nights. It was more or less about 2.5 days because I went in there. I got released in the middle of the day, if that makes sense. So I get in this small room. I'm not really good with like dimensions and stuff like that, but it was definitely smaller than this room that I'm in. It's actually a really big room, but it's a lot. It's small. It's probably the size of my bathroom that I have connected to my room, and all that was in there was a sink. So they don't really tell me much besides take my belongings and put me in this room, and a couple of hours passed by. I already been in here for 6 hours. They don't tell me anything. I don't know what's going on. I don't know exactly what's happening. And there was no clock in there, so that's kind of why my timeline is a little bit messed up, because during this time when I did have my phone was off, and my car was off when I was taking a walk and thinking about what I wanted to do, and there was no clock in my room. So that's kind of why the timeline is a lot kind of messed up in like a roller coaster. But there was no clock, and I had to ask. There was someone in a room in front of me, and there was a guard in between us in a hall, and then it was my room, and I could see directly into their room. They could see directly into mine. We had to keep the door open. I could not take a shower. On the last day, they gave me a toothbrush, and on the first day, I pretty much didn't know much of what was happening. I talked to the psych doctor who had to do like an evaluation on me and asked me like if I had a plan for what I was going to do for myself and why I was feeling that way, and I did open up to him a bit more. And then a nurse came in and pretty much finally, after being there for hours, and it's super late, explaining to me what was going on. I can't remember if it was that night though, or if it was the next morning. The nurse came in and said, basically, you're in a 5150 hold. There's no TV. You can't have TV. You can't have your cell phone, you can't have any of your belongings, you can't have any of your own clothing, and the outlets were like plugged, not with like those baby plugs that you can like pull off, but like they're like plugged from the inside, like you needed like a screwdriver to like take them off in order to like it's pretty much so if someone sticks like, well, I'm assuming, nobody told me this, but I'm assuming it's so no one can stick their finger in there and try like electrocute themselves in there or something. But I couldn't go to the bathroom by myself either. But I was allowed to use their little like handheld house phone to call my family, the family members' numbers that I could remember. And then I asked the ones that I could remember for the family members' numbers that they would have like in their phone so I can call them. And I wasn't even allowed to have a pen. Actually, one of the guards was nice enough to let me have a pen to write the numbers down on my leg, but apparently he wasn't supposed to do that, but he let me do it. The food in there was okay. I was always being watched, so that kind of sucked. There were people in there who had other issues, which was a little traumatizing to see. There was someone down the room screaming and cussing, saying for someone that she wants someone to help her, and I'm assuming she was possibly like strapped down flat on the bed. I didn't see or anything. It's totally just an assumption, so I could be wrong. I don't know if that's even legal anymore, but that's kind of what I put together in my head by how it sounded like she was moving and what she was saying. And there was a guy in front of me who was walking around without any socks or shoes on. He had his own socks on, but they had holes all like through the bottom, so he might as well have been barefoot. And I'm not judging or anything because he has mental health problems like myself. So I'm not judging or anything like that, but it was a little hard to see. I could see directly in his room, and I could see him like talking to things that weren't there and punching the air and ducking away from things that weren't there, and he was eating his food and throwing the food on the floor. So it was kind of a lot to handle, like someone screaming down here. And also the whole time I was there, I did not take my prescription. I regularly take 2 prescriptions, one in the morning and one at night, which I recently changed to just taking both of them in the morning. But that's like a different story. I didn't take my prescriptions the whole time I was there, and my prescriptions were for anxiety and depression. So I kind of thought that was very counteracted. And then on the 3rd day, on the 2nd night, they made me sleep in a hallway. They were admitting other people into the hospital, and one of the guys said, one of the nurses actually said out loud, I'm not even gonna exactly say what he said because I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but basically he chose me to sleep in the hallway with all these lights on, and all these nurses were running around everywhere, and it was extremely loud, and it was so much. But I was just sleeping in my bed, and it, like, from my recollection, I didn't have a clock or anything, but it was probably around like 2 a.m. They just started pushing my bed out, no warning, out into the hallway, and I had to sleep in the hallway. And then on the 3rd day, after I slept in that hallway, they put me in a different room, which actually had a TV, but I wasn't allowed to use the TV. It was a little less like baby proofed, we'll say. It was a little less baby proof. There were actual like cords in there, and they gave me a toothbrush, and the outlets weren't blocked. So it was a little less baby proof, but I think that was because they had evaluated me twice already, and they pretty much discovered that I was a-okay. And I was actually admitted at the end of that day, well, towards the middle of that day. But that was my experience. The guy that was in front of me ran out of his room in the middle of the night, and they had to actually like physically like chase him down and bring him back in his room. They called out his name. I actually knew his name. They had called and said it so much, and he was asking for a lot of different types of foods and things like that. I mean, that's irrelevant, but I'm just letting you guys know what it's like there. And I think maybe that sometimes when you feel like you don't want to be here, instead of saying I don't want to be here, I'm gonna do something so I'm not here, we need to start saying I don't want to be here, let me find someone and let me talk about it. And that's something that I have learned from this experience. Just this year in general has been an extremely hard year for me, and I think that that's definitely something that I've learned. Instead of knowing that I don't want to be here anymore and I don't want to take on life, I don't want to take on the struggles, instead of not wanting to be here, I am finding someone to talk to and finding a solution to help me get through that feeling, because you don't want to make permanent decisions off of feelings that are temporary. Now I just want to say my opinion on the whole experience, because even though this is just my experience, I'm sure people have different experiences. I know everyone has like disclaimers and stuff that they say, and I didn't say that in the beginning, and I should have, but this is just my experience. Everyone's experience is different. Different states are different. Different hospitals are different. Different mental health. Like instead of depression, maybe you have schizophrenia or bipolar, or it could be different. If you have different disorder, or if you're still suicidal when you get put in there, your experiences, I'm sure, are going to be different, because you can be transferred to an inpatient facility from the hospital after you're in the 5150 hold. So it's all going to depend on your circumstance and your disorder, your nurses, your physician, your therapist. That's all going to depend on those things. But for now, I want to go on to my opinion on the whole experience. I did kind of feel, in a sense, that the whole idea of putting someone who has mental health problems into a place where they don't know anybody and they don't know anybody familiar. I wasn't allowed to have visitors either. I forgot to say that. But I wasn't allowed to have visitors, so I didn't know anybody in there. I wasn't taking my prescription. I asked them every day, every time a nurse came in, I would say, I'm supposed to be taking a prescription. I'm supposed to be taking a prescription. And they would say, oh yeah, we'll tell the doctor, we'll see what they say. And I never heard back from them. So I missed my prescription for 3 days, technically 2 days, because when I got out, I took it, but I was in there for 3 days, and I missed my night prescription the night that I got admitted, and I missed my morning prescription that afternoon that I ended up going home in the middle of the day. But I do feel as if the hold is slightly counterproductive. It puts someone who's already extremely vulnerable in an even more vulnerable position, where everything that is familiar to you is taken away. And I feel like that is, in a sense, something that can turn someone who doesn't have mental health problems into someone who does. But that's just my opinion. I did learn from that experience, though. I'm not saying it's all negative. I'm just saying I slightly do feel like it's counterproductive. But in a way, of course, I learned something. Like I said earlier, you don't want to make permanent decisions off of temporary things that you're feeling. And also, instead of saying that you don't want to be here and that you are going to do something about it, instead say, I don't want to be here, I want to talk to someone, and I want to find a way to make that feeling go away. But that's the end of this video. I just wanted to give someone a little summary. I mean, it's probably an extremely long video, but I wanted to tell someone my story. So I am. And I hope it helps someone, but I hope you guys really learned something from this video. And I'm sorry I was extremely vague, but I just don't want to share too much of my private life. This is already very private as it is, but that's my story. And I'm happy to say I'm doing a lot better, and I learned from that experience. If you guys do want to know about my first experience, just let me know in the comments down below, and I'll make another video on it. But thank you so much for listening, and just know that no matter how low you're feeling in a moment, things can change overnight. They really can, whether that be in a positive way or a bad way. I hate to say it, but yin and yang. Let's stay optimistic.